Welcome to this program, which is the second in my series, Our Finger Lakes History. I am Seneca County Historian Walter Gable, who is the host of this program series. Today's program deals with the Ku Klux Klan in the Finger Lakes area in the 1920s. Historians like to ask questions and try to answer them. The focus question for this program is, was the Ku Klux Klan active in the Finger Lakes area in the 1920s? The simple answer to this question is yes. Although the work of the Ku Klux Klan was often done in secret, some information has been uncovered and can be reported. Here you see two very visual pieces of evidence of Klan activity in the Finger Lakes in 1925. Before we turn to actual events in the greater Finger Lakes area in the 1920s, I want to share a very brief history of the KKK. There were actually three different time periods of major Klan activity in United States history. The first KKK flourished in the South in the late 1860s as a white supremacist group targeting the recently freed African Americans. And this is probably the one we most frequently think about. The second KKK arose in Georgia in 1915, at least partially because of the great silent film by D.W. Griffith, The Birth of a Nation. Unlike the first Klan, which focused on only being anti-African Americans, this second Klan was opposed to anyone who was not 100% native white and Protestant, and was also opposed to alcoholic consumption. This second Klan flourished in the mid-1920s, with as many as 4 to 5 million members in the United States. Here you see the second KKK's Creed of Beliefs, taken from a 1925 Klan Rally booklet. You will note that the first several principles are rather low-key, but look carefully at the last three Creed statements, which I have highlighted with arrows. The one connected with my blue arrow shows the concerns of the Red Scare right after World War I, the fear that communists would infiltrate the United States. The next one, with the yellow arrow, shows how this second Klan was intensely anti-immigrant. The last one, with the red arrow, makes it clear that members of this second KKK felt strongly that any native-born American was superior to any foreigner. A third KKK emerged after World War II. This KKK was opposed to efforts to promote the civil rights of African Americans or any minority group. Once again, this KKK was primarily based in the South. An example of some of their activity is suggested by the fact that several members of the KKK were convicted of the murders that occurred in the 1963 bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, and you see a headline there. I would add that there is still about an estimated 150 local KKK chapters today in the United States. I would also point out that some of the issues that the KKK was concerned about in the 1920s are issues in this year's presidential election. It might seem difficult for us today to realize that there were an estimated 200,000 Ku Klux Klan members in New York State in 1923, according to a New York Times article. Klan issues led to marathon sessions at the 1924 Democratic Party National Convention that was held in Madison Square Garden in New York City. The Klan in the 1920s was especially strong on Long Island, but Binghamton, Buffalo, and Rochester were upstate New York cities that were also active Klan sites. In this frame, you are viewing the cover of a booklet published by the KKK in Buffalo. What happened in Buffalo in the 1920s is that the police infiltrated the Klan headquarters, securing Klan membership records. The Klan membership list was made public, and that led to strong anti-KKK repercussions. For example, houses of Klan members were marked in nightly raids. Secondly, there were boycotts of businesses of Klan members, and one Klan member committed suicide after his Klan membership was made public. Here you see the cover of the program booklet for those attending a 5-day Klan rally in Elmira, New York in July of 1925. At the right, if you look carefully at the schedule of events, you will notice that there is a strong emphasis upon religion as well as patriotism. I think it's no small coincidence that the gathering was scheduled over the 4th of July weekend. Now, this booklet consists of several pages, and here you see one of those pages, and it identifies paid advertisements that appeared in the program booklet. If you note carefully, some of the business owners were willing to have their names of their businesses actually appear in printed form, while some other paid ads simply read, "Compliments of a friend." I could add a lot more stories of KKK activity in upstate New York in the 1920s, but I think by now you understand that there was considerable KKK activity in upstate New York in the 1920s. So now I turn to the real focus of this program, KKK activity here in the immediate Finger Lakes area in the 1920s. What you see in this slide indicates some of the specific events I am going to discuss. To begin, years ago, I heard stories of a KKK rally that took place on Sweets Hill sometime in the 1920s, with thousands of people attending. Sweets Hill is located about 4 miles south of Waterloo and is the highest natural geographic elevation in the northern portion of Seneca County. Can't you just imagine how on a dark night in the mid-1920s, a cross-burning taking place on that hill could be seen for miles away? Well, for years, I wanted to gather information about such a reported KKK rally, but I never could find the information. Fortunately, and coincidentally, in September of 1923, I found this little newspaper article on the internet. Note that the article appeared in a Naples, New York newspaper. When I found that newspaper article, I was confident that I could then go to libraries in the area and find local newspapers from Seneca County newspapers and Geneva newspapers. But I did not find any such article appearing in a local newspaper, and I think there's significance to that. Imagine 1,500 Klansmen burning a cross on Sweets Hill on a dark September night. Now, at the Waterloo Library and Historical Society, I was able to find the research notes of the late John Jinyoung. He had done some extensive information gathering on KKK activity, and I appreciate that the Waterloo Library and Historical Society has allowed me to share that information. Jinyoung wrote, quote, that during the 1920s and probably the early 1930s, the local chapter of the KKK held Klan rallies or meetings in several places. One such rally that he noted occurred on the CM farm, and I think you need to understand that he very carefully, in many cases, used initials rather than full first and last name. When the law enforcement officers tried to stop that particular Klan rally, the farm owner told the law officers to leave, as he would do as he pleased on his farm. Jinyoung noted also that in 1924, a Klan rally took place on the Raymond Schaefer Sr. farm, and that at this rally, the KKK burned a fiery cross. Historians tend to point out that burning the fiery cross was really a characteristic of the second KKK of the 1920s and not the original KKK after the Civil War. Although Jinyoung did not identify any specific Klan rally occurring on Sweets Hill in his research work, he did identify that a Klan rally took place nearby on the GW farm. Now, Jinyoung also wrote about an incident occurring at a Klan rally apparently south of Seneca Falls on Route 96. One night, a mother with her daughter was driving in a car in a very dark evening setting, and they were flagged down by a man leaping out in front of them. The man was clad in a white gown and hood. He wanted to know if they were looking for a meeting. When they said they were not, they were allowed to proceed on their way. But they were obviously very physically shaken and scared by the whole incident. Another story is coming from John Jinyoung's father, who was an undertaker. He had two stories to share with his son. In one story, he described the process by which the local clan would borrow the folding chairs for the meeting. And as noted on the slide, someone would phone to request to borrow chairs. After being assured that they were available, the caller would then indicate they were for the KKK. Possibly feeling a bit trapped, Dad would indicate chairs could be borrowed by anyone as long as they were cared for and returned promptly. The caller would then say that a local trucker would be contacted to pick up, deliver, and return the chairs. Arrangements were made in this manner to borrow them, and the chairs were always returned. A second story that John Jinyoung shared from his undertaker father dealt with his father visiting a local carpenter who may well have been involved in making the wooden crosses that were burned at local Klan rallies. The carpenter, however, wouldn't confirm or deny this possible involvement. Jinyoung also, in his research notes, shared a very brief comment that apparently there was an incident in which an alleged spy was going to observe what was going on at a local Klan rally. He was caught by the Klansmen, roughed up considerably, and then allowed to leave. There was a lot of Klan activity in the Geneva area. For example, a large Klan rally was planned for Geneva on Saturday, October 10th, 1925, and you can see in this poster the indication of the fiery cross, the date, Saturday, October 10th. Now, the KKK headquarters for this planned rally were at the Forden Farm just west of Geneva, but the rally didn't take place as it had been elaborately planned. On Friday night, the night before the planned festivities in Geneva, an early autumn wintry storm swept in. The Geneva Times described the severity of this storm. It was a cold reception that Geneva gave the Klan today. Flurries of snow and blustering winds swept across the Forden farm where the Klan assembly was held. Klansmen who braved the weather wore anything from heavy sweaters to wintry overcoats and earlaps. Some of the smaller tents blew down as fast as they were erected. The big tent held firm until a big blast of wind toppled the tent just as Klansmen were eating their lunch. Fortunately, no one was injured, but attempts to get the tent up again were unsuccessful. Officials in charge of the affair were much discouraged and were considering calling off the scheduled events, including the parade and fireworks that night in Geneva. Although not as many Klansmen showed up as planned, there was a large delegation from Buffalo. Bands present were the Klan Band from Elmira and the Tire City Band from Seneca County. The fireworks did not get set off, but there are conflicting reports as to whether or not a small version of the planned parade actually took place. Now here you see a picture of a Klansman guard from Buffalo at the Forden farm for this event. Another Klan event took place in early September of 1927. Klansmen gathered at Flint, a hamlet a few miles west of Geneva on routes 5 and 20. In this picture, you see Klansmen in their white gowns and hoods for this event. Part of the plans for this KKK event included a parade in downtown Geneva. The major event of this 1927 Klan rally in Flint was this parade in Geneva. As many as 300 Klansmen and their family members were to be in the parade. As you can see in this newspaper headline, all Geneva police officers were placed on duty for Saturday, September 3rd for this Klan parade. The parade was apparently going rather calmly until a street riot broke out on Seneca Street. The Geneva Times wrote that long white columns of marchers passed between solid ranks of silent spectators. Now and then an insult was uttered in a low voice, and a few jeers sounded from the crowd. Police officers dotted the street, however, and they moved quickly to any place where trouble seemed likely to be starting. The parade group proceeded down Seneca Street, then countermarched at the Seneca Hotel, and started moving back up Seneca Street. When it reached Linden Street, some trouble broke out, the exact origin of which is not known, but it resulted in a general disturbance and the breaking of the parade ranks. What was described in the newspaper story as a street riot took place on Seneca Street. Cordian Melius of Stanley was arrested, charged with wielding the club that caused the bad cut on the top of Bernard Campbell's head. Several supporters of the Klan and those opposed to it were bruised. There was also an incident in front of the Armory on Main Street. An aged man was knocked down, and another fight broke out, but was quickly stopped by the police. The Times article, quoting again, "The parade apparently passed through Pulteney Street back to Washington Street, the starting place, without further trouble, although some of the Klansmen are declared to have found the tires of their cars slashed when they returned." Now, don't think for a moment that everyone locally in the 1920s was either a KKK member or a KKK sympathizer. Here you see a December 1923 Geneva Times headline showing that this local minister was attacking the KKK in his Sunday morning sermons. The Rev Kenneth A Bray of St. Peter's Church denounced the Klan organizers as being anti-Catholic, anti-racial, and anti-all things that stand for fellowship and brotherhood. He urged his parishioners to show more fearless hostility towards the powers of darkness so suggestive of division, of separation, and hatred. He went on to say that he himself was prejudiced, and I thank God that I am prejudiced by 101 things that the Klan apparently stands for. So, it appears safe to conclude that there was much Klan activity throughout the Finger Lakes in the 1920s. It was a time period of great change, with some embracing new ways and others trying to adhere to traditional values. Arch Merrill of Rochester, in his book Our Goodly Heritage, characterized the KKK of the 1920s as resembling a hooded cobra, and that from its beginning, the Ku Klux Klan was bankrupt in decency. I hope you've enjoyed this program in our Finger Lakes History Series. If you have any stories to share with me about local KKK activity, please contact me.
Finger Lakes one time.